Hello, my name is Lexi Gordon. Today I'll be presenting to you a practitioner, this dashboard you see here. To give you a basic summary before we begin with more detail, you'll see an interactive dashboard full of client-centric data in which we can compare factors such as readiness score and training load to compare among themselves, their team members, and/or position groups. I chose to break this dashboard down further into an individual level rather than a team aspect so that the practitioner can get to understand and know specific insights of each athlete individually. Maybe in the future we could either add on or create a team dashboard where we can further analyze team trends in training. But for this, I believe understanding the individual athlete is important as a practitioner for risk management of possible injuries, overuse injuries, etc. Throughout this dashboard, you will see that it follows a blue and gold theme represented by this team's colors. The way to manipulate all the data you see here in the blue graphs is to use this yellow filters column on the left. As you can see, we can change which athlete we are viewing, what date we want to view the athlete's performance on over the past amount of days we would want to choose to compare their information to, and who we want to compare the athlete to, whether it's their individual self, their team, or their position group, all with these drop-down bars on the left. So, if we zoom up on this box here, you will see general profile information of the given athlete. You'll see their name, a picture of their headshot, along with their position, height, weight, and their injury and training statuses for that given date. All of this you would typically see on a roster page. A green check mark next to the injury status represents full participation. If you see a yellow exclamation, that could mean limited participation, and a red X that the athlete is out and did not participate on these dates. These markers will change depending on which athlete or date you choose. So for example, you will see Donald Duck had full participation on 11/18. If we change the date to 11/5, we can see that Donald Duck was out of participation that day due to a possible injury or illness. If we change the date again to 12/17, we can see that Donald Duck still participated but was limited on what he could participate in for that day due to a possible injury or illness again. To the right of this, you will see a readiness gauge, in which this will give general information as to how ready the athlete is to perform based on their perceived readiness that was recorded through their daily monitoring. Readiness score was calculated to determine how ready you are to participate in a given activity. This score takes all 5 metrics, stress, sleep, energy, muscle soreness, and confidence, scaled from 1 to 10 to create a readiness score out of 50. We can see the percentages that are calculated of the athlete's maximum readiness score. So, if we change the athlete to Superman, we can see his readiness gauge is over 95% of his maximum, meaning that he is well prepared for performance that day. The red, yellow, and green colors on the gauge are representative of how likely they are to be ready to participate in the activity. Green meaning they are extremely ready to participate, and red meaning they are probably not ready at all. To the readiness gauge, we have an SRPE gauge here to the right. This perceived exertion is a subjective gauge that rates how difficult the session was on that given date. RPE was distinguished on a 1 to 10 point scale, 1 being the easiest, 10 being the hardest on that date for the duration of the session. SRPE, or session RPE, was calculated by multiplying the athlete's reported RPE by the duration of the session. The colors in this gauge are opposite of the readiness gauge you see here, because in red, you can see it's representative of a higher or more difficult RPE. So, if we change the date of Superman's performance to 10/19, we see that his SRPE was 82.9% of his maximum. So therefore, as a practitioner, his RPE was very high for this session. So we could suggest that maybe the next session could be a lighter load. Moving on to down here in the middle of the dashboard, we can see each of the key performance indicators where we can compare the athlete's most recent information on that given date to their average or the overall team average. I wanted to give a number of KPIs to review so that we can understand an overall view of how our athletes are performing individually. We have readiness indicators in which you can compare the readiness gauge for this person on this given date. For example, if we switch the athlete from Superman to Queen Elsa on 11/18 over the past 7 days, we can see the information changes respectively. The first number we see in this column here, next to each of the readiness indicators, are the readiness values on this given date. The column next to the values here are the athlete's individual average over the past 7 days. We can change the comparison from themselves to their team or even their position chosen through the filter section to your left. Here you will see an indicator gauge of how far or below their average they are on the given date selected. Green means that they are above the average, red meaning they are below the average. If we see no color, that means they are equal to their average on that date. So on this day, we see a majority of Queen Elsa's metrics are above her average. So this could be beneficial in terms of the athlete pushing themselves and making improvements during this training session. Likewise, we also have a graph right here for training load indicators for this athlete. SRPE, which is the RPE multiplied by the duration, the RPE on a 1 to 10 point scale, and the duration of the training session on that given date. Again, we are comparing the athlete's score to the average of whatever we are comparing, whether it's themselves, their position, or the team, over the past 7 days. So as of right now, we are comparing Queen Elsa to herself's average. If we change her comparison to her team, we can see that the information will change in this graph here. To the right of these key performance indicators here, we have a visual representation of a given readiness metric over time graph. On this graph, you'll see a rolling average of that athlete's score represented by this yellow line here. Each bar on the graph represents a different date and the day score they have received on that date. There are 9 separate readiness pickers that we can change for the graph, from stress all the way to readiness score. So if we change this graph that we see here from energy to stress on this date over the past 7 days, we can see how typically on these dates his stress levels were higher than his rolling average over the past 7 days, some of them being below. Below here we have a performance visualization in which we have bar graphs for each performance metric, trap bar deadlift, bench press, jump height, and percent body fat, where we can compare the athlete's latest scores represented here in the blue bars to their all-time best, represented here in the yellow. For example, we can use James Bond. Let's say we change the date to 10/20/17. We can use this to see that on 10/20, James Bond had performed his best on each of the metrics, aside from the percentage body fat. This allows us to determine whether they have improved or not over the past 4 performance dates. Finally, we have a performance over time graph. Here on the left, we could choose a performance picker, whether it's trap bar deadlift, bench press, jump height, or body fat, whatever we are choosing to analyze. For example, if we change the athlete to Donald Duck, and the performance picker will stay on the trap bar deadlift, we can see that the athlete's performance over time from 10/20 to 12/18 has improved. This athlete has made continuous improvement, as we can see through this graph, across all 4 performance sessions. So as a practitioner, this could tell us that the athlete's training program has been beneficial towards him. So, as you can see here, by using this interactive dashboard, we are able to see trends with athletes, whether we're comparing to their individual selves, their teammates, or their position groups that will allow practitioners to flag any potential injury risks that can be detrimental to the athlete. Individual athletes' progress of their training and the use of these performance metrics can be beneficial when it comes to designing future practices for these athletes. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this dashboard, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.